So the chapter is opening up with confirmation that Izuku has absolutely defeated Muscular here. At the end of the previous chapter, we saw he basically like one-shotted him with an attack similar to what he did to Overhaul. And he's turning him into, I guess, the police here or whoever the authorities are. But he's also keeping himself incognito at the same time, like still producing smoke from, you know, the 6 users quirk that he just recently picked up. And as soon as they have Muscular, he just darts out of there. And that brings up the question, so like, why is he doing this? Well, I just think he's ultimately trying to stay, like I said, incognito at this point. I'm just assuming he's trying to get as much attention away from himself because, you know, what's going to be talked about later on in this chapter of like Shigaraki tracking him down. So then we see him calling All Might and he meets up with him in like this alleyway. And then All Might asks him if he has any injuries and Izuku says, "I'm uninjured. Thanks to you, I'm completely fine." And then we see those wraps around his arm unravel and he says the support item that was delivered right before the travel restrictions were instituted, the power stabilizing mid gauntlet, I don't feel a thing thanks to it. And then All Might says, remember that this is just an endurance prototype. It's supposed to reinforce your entire arm, but it's nowhere near strong enough to withstand your power at 100%. Make sure to not overdo yourself before the final showdown. Now, as for the mid gauntlet, there's no confirmation on exactly where this thing is coming from yet, but I guess we do know that it came from overseas, considering it says the item was delivered right before travel restrictions were instituted. So in the spoilers yesterday, it was straight up said that this is coming from America. But now that we have the full chapter and the, you know, the rough fan translations, no instance of America is being mentioned here. And I keep mentioning America because that's kind of important, because if you saw the My Hero 2 Heroes movie, Rebecca Shield, the daughter of David Shield, All Might's former partner from his time in America, made Izuku pretty much the same thing in that movie, except at that time it was called Full Gauntlet, and it allowed Izuku to use 30% of his power. And it had a nearly identical aesthetic, but not only that, it formed the same way that we see it forming in this chapter. So either Horikoshi is straight up trying to blend the continuity of the movies into the actual continuity of the manga. I'm not saying that the movies aren't canon, because Horikoshi himself said that they pretty much are. But that being said, it looks like Horikoshi could try to be implementing that into the main story here, like I said, or at least slowly, because, you know, America's not being mentioned, and if America's not being mentioned, then obviously Rebecca is not being mentioned at all. So I don't want to get ahead of myself or hype anybody up saying that this is absolutely tying into that stuff, meaning that like we're going to see Rebecca soon, or we're going to see David, who I think is in jail, you know, considering what happens in the movie. Spoilers. I just don't know at this point, but given that we are in the final act of the series right now, I wouldn't be surprised if, like I said, Horikoshi is just trying to tie all these continuities and come full circle with it now. So then All Might gets a call from Hawks, and this is basically establishing what the future of this arc or the next couple chapters are going to be, where they're just trying to get Izuku to come together for this like 5-man team here to basically go after Shigaraki and All for One and try to end all of this. Where it ultimately comes down to Hawks saying that, like, I know that these are trying times for you, but I request that you work together with us. So then at this point, I guess we're going to a flashback to before Izuku left the hospital, maybe? And we're finally coming to the explanation of how Izuku is okay, or at least his body is okay. If you've been following my coverage of this series, you'll know that I've had a lot of questions about this. Given that there's been so much weight put on him damaging his body using the full power of One for All, or at least what was accessible to him, it's been built up that like, hey, he potentially could become paralyzed or just unable to use One for All anymore because of his damage accrual. And a couple chapters back, when we had a hard 1-month time skip from him leaving the hospital to him fighting Muscular, there was a lot of questions about, okay, so why is he okay? Well, it turns out, somebody in my comments section put it perfectly actually, it turns out that he's now built different. Long story short, when he accumulated a lot of those injuries, he was only at 5% of his power with One for All, and now that he can use 45%, his body has adapted, and therefore he's not as fragile or vulnerable as he was before. But more specifically, he says, in the past, you incurred injuries from within your body. This time, most of the damage was dealt externally. In addition, whether it be a side effect of your quirk, your internal structure seems to have been protected from the inside and out, i.e., you are now built different. And then he tacks on at the end, even so, you'll still have to be careful and stay out of harm's way. Like, oh, okay, yeah, cool, thanks, Doc. So then we're coming to the big reveal for Izuku's mom, finding out about One for All, the truth about the history and how it ties to everything. And further going into why Izuku has been so incognito this time, he says, Shigaraki can find my location at any time. And that is absolutely true. Let us not forget that Shigaraki has Ragdoll Search Quirk, which is actually pretty broken now that I think about it, because I think it allows him to know up to 100 different people's location at all times, but not only that, also their weaknesses too. But yeah, he knows Izuku's location at all times pretty much, so he's just a walking Dragon Ball in his internal Dragon Ball radar. So that's why he has to stay away from everybody, not draw too much attention to himself. And another reason he's explaining why he can't go back to UA here, because if he did, he's inviting death to his friends pretty much. And then Izuku says something else interesting here. He says if Shigaraki perfects his form sooner than later, this situation will go from bad to worse. I need to stop Shigaraki and All for One before that happens. So this has been teased for a while now. The 100% are just the full perfect form of Shigaraki plus Ultra Shigaraki. We only saw him at 75% of his true potential in the war, and then obviously we all know what happened after that. So does this mean that he's actually going to stop Shigaraki before achieving his full metamorphosis? It's possible, but man, that would be a little weird, right? Considering how much it was set up and foreshadowed and talked about. I mean, I don't want to say it's Chekhov's gun, but kind of like a Chekhov's gun thing, right? Like, we need to see Shigaraki at 100%. I just feel like it would be weird if that just doesn't happen. I mean, also, we need an excuse for Izuku to go 100% as well. I mean, I guess that's the ultimate battle here. Both of them at the peak of their power, I don't see why not. All for One's kind of a wild card. He's obviously going to have some part in this, but, you know, just Shigaraki, we'll say, for now. So then we get like this big emotional moment from his mom, and she's disapproving as expected, but he's like, look, I got to do this, Mom. I'll just come back later, all right? Everything will be fine. So then All Might, I guess, begrudgingly agrees to this, and then we have the formation of the team here, like Best Jeanist, Hawks, Endeavor, All Might, and Izuku. And as per Best Jeanist, they're going to be using Izuku as bait to track Shigaraki down. So then we cut to Izuku visiting Gran Torino in his hospital bed, and he tells him about the Nana stuff because she said, hey, you know, tell Gran Torino I said hi when they were in the Vestige world. And then Gran Torino says, don't be too stubborn about redeeming Shigaraki. Sometimes death can be a form of salvation too. So this is another instance of them talking about how Izuku might have to potentially straight up kill Shigaraki. This was a topic brought up between the Vestiges a couple chapters back as well. And it brought forth the options of like, hey, you know, this might not be able to have like a happy ending where Izuku somehow saves Shigaraki through, I don't know, talk no jutsu, or he just somehow non-violently defeats him and reforms him in some way. But then it's also showing that there's a very real option here that you might have to just put Shigaraki down. He's, in my opinion, way past the point of saving at this point. I mean, yes, he was inherently innocent, but given everything that has happened throughout his life, and it's just too far at this point, and I think what Gran Torino is saying here is pretty accurate. Death will be a form of salvation for Shigaraki in this case. Then we see him give Izuku his scarf, hood, cape thing, and that confirms that what he's been wearing this whole time, it was in fact Gran Torino's. Then we come to the final panel of the chapter, and it says, time to repay the favor to the League of Villains. Top 3, Deku and All Might team up. So this was like a big cut to the future, I suppose. I mean, not like weeks or days, but just, you know, hard cut to them seemingly going after the League of Villains immediately here. And it makes me think, is this like the beginning of the final arc? I mean, like I said, we're in the final act, but not necessarily in the final arc, meaning that we're in the final stretch of chapters until the series is over. I personally don't think we are, but maybe this is going to, I don't know, lead into the beginning of that or something, because if they are straight up going after the League of Villains here, that would mark the ending of it, right? But I don't know, there's just so many other character arcs that we need to go through, so many other story points, that I think this is just the beginning of the end, more so than I guess even chapter, is it 306 or 307 was? But yeah, let me know what you think about this in the comments. Where do you think this stuff is headed? If you liked the video, please give it a like, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.